That was the sound of a prison. Welcome to Kingston Penitentiary, Canada's oldest and most notorious and famous correctional facility. My name is Dave Stewart. I worked here for 33 years under my 34-year sentence with corrections. And I say that lovingly because I did have a pretty good career. I started off here as a correctional officer in November of 1970, and I retired 13 years ago. And then I came back. But I'll tell you, when I came back, I had to get my priorities right. I said, okay, starting off the week on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I said, okay, golf, pen. Okay, I had it all set, so I was okay. So, welcome. You guys must realize this place was in operation as a penitentiary for 178 years. From June of 1835, when the first inmates came in here, until September 2013, when the door was closed and the penitentiary was no longer used as an institution. 178 years of history. I mean, some of the buildings in here are 182 years old.
Wow.
And this place, you got to realize, before Confederation, before Canada. It's a lot of history that you're going to be going through today. I mean, I worked for the government for 40 years, so, and I come back. It's just like a bad cold, you know, or a bad dream, I don't know. But no, today you are going to be walking into history. There's a lot of history in this place, a lot of amazing things that you're going to see, some lovely stories, some amazing stories that you're going to hear from your guides, as well as retired staff like myself, who worked in various areas in the institution, from retired guards to retired wardens, to retired case management or parole officers. So we got a wide variety of people that are here today. So, the buildings. I always ask people when they go out there, look at the buildings and just imagine how they were built. Because back in the 1800s, they didn't have J.C. Crane to come in and lift up the stones and put them into place. It was all done by hand. Ropes, pulleys, block and tackle, and by inmates after 1835. The stones were cut from two quarries, close at hand, one in Portsmouth Village and the other one where the Queen's Football Stadium is. The stones were cut, brought here, the stonemasons did their magic, and once you get outside there, you'll see what I'm talking about. The buildings are absolutely fantastic. I mean, they're 182 years old, some of them. I think they'll last another 182 years. So do take a look at the buildings. Not just once you get outside, they're on your whole tour. Because like you go into the winged cells and you look at the design and how the place is built, the shop dome, you'll see some fantastic architecture in there, which I think is probably a lost art by Masons of today. So do take lots of pictures, do ask questions. And I always say, if you have a question, please ask it. No question is foolish. I mean, you may have a question, but 6 other people have that same question in their minds. So do ask the questions. And we will try to answer them as the best of our ability, and the guides will too, in accordance with the law. So do that, and the last thing I'm going to say again is welcome to Kingston Penitentiary, welcome to the big house, have a great tour, and enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can go again.
Alrighty. So not yet. We gotta go to first.
Sorry.
So hi again, everybody. Welcome to KP. My name is Victoria. I'm going to be your tour guide today. So before we can get started, I have a few more housekeeping things to go over. The tour is around 90 minutes in length. It is a walking tour. That being said, there are spots to rest at a lot of the stations. If you see chairs, that is what they're there for. Feel free to sit down. There is a washroom around the halfway point. I will point it out when we get there. And also we like to ask, please do not drink the water out of any of the taps. It is non-potable. You don't want to drink it. It wouldn't be very nice. So if you have any outside liquids, that's fine. We also have vending machines here if you are thirsty. Just please don't fill up any water bottles in the sinks or anything like that. We are a big group today, so this is also when I like to ask, please stay with the group. I haven't lost anybody yet. I don't want to lose anybody, so I wouldn't like today to be the day that happens. You're going to notice me counting you a lot. It's just to make sure I have all the people that I'm supposed to have. I am accountable for everybody wearing a red wristband right now. And lastly, although we do anticipate questions about high-profile cases, we are not able to answer these Privacy Act and out of respect for the victims and the victims' families. That being said, like Dave was saying, any other questions you might have, feel free to ask. I will do my best to answer them. So without further ado, we can get started. So the first brick at KP was laid in 1833, meaning yes, Kingston Penitentiary is older than Canada. The first 6 inmates arrived on June 1st, 1835. At that point, both architecturally and in mind to its correctional model, KP was modeled after the Auburn State Penitentiary in New York. Now at that time, corrections focused on isolation. If you came to prison, you were meant to be isolated for the crimes you had committed and basically meant to think and sit about what you had done. You weren't allowed, for example, to speak unless spoken to, and if you did so, you would be whipped, lashed, etc. So it was a very different environment than the penitentiary system is now. By the time KP closed in 2013, it had been following the rehabilitation model for many years. So a lot of the things that we're going to see today and we're going to be talking about today fit into that model, including where we are now. So the room you were all waiting in and this room here both have the same function. They are both open visitation rooms. Open referring to the amount of contact you were able to have with your visitors. As you can see in that picture on the wall there is tables, and you were able to sit at those tables with your family members. So everywhere there is a concrete circle on the ground is where tables used to be. These tables had glass tops to ensure the officers were making sure nobody was handing anything under them. And they also had metal discs on the top that had microphones inside of them. Now the officers didn't listen in for fun. They did try to give you as much privacy as they could. However, if they saw or heard something they deemed suspicious, they were able to pick up into that feed. The reason being is they were trying to stop contraband from coming into the institution. You might have noticed when you're coming up the hallway, that is the exact same hallway all the visitors came through. There was footprints on the ground. Every person coming into the institution was searched. Did not matter if you were a child, you were searched. So you would go through a metal detector, there would be a chance to be patted down, and the drug dogs would also come through on occasion, just to ensure nothing's coming in. Also in that very back corner over there, where that very questionable clown is the children's corner. So this corner, there's one in each room. It had a TV, a VCR, toys and games for the children of the offenders in the institution, just to make sure that, things were a little bit more normal for them. So that is open visitation. The second type of visitation that we're going to be heading past to go outside is closed visitation, referring to the fact that you would no physical contact with your visitors. Whenever you think of visitation in the movies or on TV, this is kind of what you're thinking about, with the plexiglass screens, the 2 chairs, and the phones. Closed visitation was for inmates who were at a high risk of bringing in contraband. You've done it before, they had reason to believe that you were going to do it. This is where you're doing your visitation, as again, no physical contact was made with your guests. So the visitors would be on that side, the inmates would be on this side. We're going to be heading past it to go outside, so please take a peek, take as many pictures as you'd like, and we'll be on our way. Alrighty, so we're going to head this way. This is when you do want to follow Dave.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Everybody else will come through here.
I see, sorry.
Yeah, this is the ramp side, I guess, eh?
Yeah, so you see, the inmates were locked inside there,
Right, in those
and then
cages.
the
Then they
visitor
can
would be
visit
sitting
here.
here, talking to each other,
Toilet paper for crying?
and that's for that, and yeah, that's exactly what it was.
I
I mean,
thought
what
so.
they wouldn't put boxes of tissue out, because things could be hidden in the box.
True.
You can't hide anything.
In that roll, true.
Okay.
Cool.
Donna, you got one coming out. Okay, right around. Okay, and you meet up with the lovely lady there.
Okay.
She'll take you on your way.
There.
Hi.
Can I push you or you?
Sure, which way are you going?
Just round here
Okay.
and to the left.
All right.
Oh yeah, you've got this worked out.
Been at it a long time.
So you're just going to go here to the left and
Okay.
you'll see your group right there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
Excuse me.
So we are in front of the third and final type of visitation here at Kingston Pen. These are the PFV private family visits, also commonly known as conjugal visits. So PFVs were introduced in the Canadian system in 1982. At that point, KP kind of had what looked like a mini trailer park. It was a bunch of trailer homes surrounded by fencing. These units were put in 1997. They were put in 1997. I was born in 1997. I'll leave it up to you guys who aged better. But these units were used up until it closed in 2013. So there are 6 of them. The one at the very far end has 3 bedrooms. The one down here has 1, and all the rest have 2. Just depending on the size of your family coming to stay would depend on the unit you were in.
How long were the family allowed to stay?
Up to 72 hours. So that would either be a Friday to a Sunday, a Monday to a Wednesday, and you could reapply every 2 months. Now, to be eligible to apply for PFVs, there were 3 criteria you had to meet. The first is you had to have no history of domestic violence on your record. There is no surveillance inside these units. You and your family are getting some private time, so understandably, if they're worried about the safety of your loved ones, you're not going to be getting in here. The second is it had to be an immediate family member, so your spouse, your kids, your siblings, your parents, or a common law partner. And lastly, is you had to have enough money in your inmate account to provide the food for your family's stay. We're going to talk a little bit later about how inmates made money, but the inmates had to buy the food for their family's visit at the canteen. You couldn't bring food in from the outside. It's too easy to contraband in through food. So if you had no money in your inmate account, you were not getting a PFV that month. Everything else in the units is provided, though. They looked like little apartments when they were up and running. You know, beds, linens, pots and pans, things like that. The front lawns would even have, you know, picnic tables and kids' toys on them, just to sort of make things more normal for your family coming in. Where was I going? So like I said, 72 hours every 2 months. You could reapply after 2 months. However, there are 6 units. When the institution was last running, they had over 430 inmates here. So you were not likely to get that PFV every 2 months. There were times in the institution's history where qualified inmates were going more than 2 years without their PFVs, simply because there was such high demand. So it would all depend on demand for these units. But those are the 3 types of visitation here at Kingston Pen. And with that, we're going to head this way.
Excuse me.
So as we come this way, you're going to... Oh, sorry, go for it.
The inmates, so would they have knives, forks, and stuff like that?
Yeah, when you're in there with your family, absolutely. You were locked in, so you couldn't get out. So when the families were there, they were searched coming out and going in, and everything in the unit had to be accounted for before everybody left. However,
Like, did they have any history of their, say, husband using a knife or fork on
no, that's why if you had any sort of history of domestic violence,
but you could turn.
You weren't getting it.
You know,
So it would make a difference if you were, say, a murderer or a fraud. No. So how did it went for 2 years? Was it just on when your name went in? It was just the first person's name in is the first person taken?
So every 2 months you had to reapply,
Yes.
and then I guess it would be sort of similar like that. And once you reapplied, you would get in whenever it was open and you were accepted.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wherever you were on the list.
Yeah.
Wow.
So go for it.
Is this open space available to the inmates or not?
No, you would only be coming through here whenever you were going somewhere. You wouldn't just be milling around. So I'm going to hand you guys all over to Donna now, and she's going to talk to you at the North Gate.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. My name is Donna Moran. I was the warden here for 5.5 years and spent 38 years altogether in jail, all on the right side of the bars. But my job today is really easy. I get to tell you about the North Gate. So the North Gate actually is this entire building. It was, you may have heard this already, designed by an architect named William Coverdale, who was given the task of making it intimidating. He wanted to know that when a vehicle went by here, or a guy riding a horse in the early days, he would know that this is a prison. Pretty good job, I think, all things considered. But it was designed to actually be the principal entrance, and it was the only vehicle and pedestrian entrance for about the first 150 years.
Wow.
In the 1950s, there was a vehicle entry, sally port put on the back on the south wall, and but pedestrians always came through here. Vehicles came in and went through here from the opening up until about 1970s, and then eventually it was modified inside so vehicles couldn't get through. There was an alternate gateway. It was down about midway down the west wall overlooking Hatter's Bay. And it was there for ship deliveries, only for ship deliveries. In the early 1800s, everything moved by ship. It was torn down in 1926, no more ship deliveries, and they just made it a solid piece of wall, and that's where the 5th tower is. So now there was the building around that gateway was actually not quite as big as this one, but it was apartments. And there was a reason for that. When the jail first opened, it was actually a long way away from the city. Now there was a little village here for people to live in, but it wasn't very big, and it was already pretty occupied with fishermen and sailors. So staff who worked here, there wasn't any close by accommodation, and staff had to live close enough to hear the institutional bell ring. Because in the early 1800s, there's no telephone or pagers, so if there was an incident or a problem or an emergency at the jail, they would ring this bell, and people would go off duty, would put on their uniforms and report to work. The bell is now in the tower, up here below the dome. You can see the peak of it up there. That was built in 1896, and the bell was raised, but we always had the bell right from the get-go. So the bell had that purpose of calling people into work. So in the early days, when there wasn't any accommodation nearby, they built apartments. So there was an apartment around the west gateway, and there was also another apartment that was built in the east shop block. So staff actually lived in the jail with their families for the first 100 years or so. That was stopped pretty much in the early part of the 19th century, or the 1900s. I kind of like that. It's nice living outside the walls, spend enough time inside. But that links to a story I'm going to tell you in a little bit. The bell also had 2 other purposes. It rang to open the workday. So it would ring to let the community know that inmate work gangs were coming out to work in the community. So they would be the inmates who were going out with officers to work in the quarry, or to work on the farm, or in other, supervised work detail. Then it would ring again at the end of the workday that would tell the community, okay, they're all in, the count's in and correct, it's all okay. So the bell was a pretty significant. That was necessary until about the 1930s, and then after that, it was rung at 8 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon, just as a symbol. It was really just tradition that it would ring for the opening and closing of the workday, and it did that right up until the last day that the jail operated in September of 2013. So the other thing that's important about this building is, other than being access and egress, is that when it was completed, it was being built at the same time that the stone wall was being built and all the 5 towers were being built. Before that 12-foot cedar plank fence was, it was okay, but you can imagine a few inmates went over that fence fairly handily. So by about 1845, when this was completed, it tied together the wall